Welcome to Matt's Play Games Top 10 Best Games of 2021.
Matt, the year has come to a close. A new year has begun. Coronavirus has been defeated. And everything's great and glorious again. And because of that, we have finally come together and we have determined if video games are good or not. What are you... Read the verdict.
It says here video games might be good.
Little less of a determinate answer than I had kind of hoped for after the triumphant year of 2021.
Yeah, it was just like an upward arc the whole time.
Mm-hmm.
Beginning, it was kind of rough, but then it just got better and better.
Better and better.
Didn't stop getting better.
Right. And now everything is good again until the end of time. And because of that, we have come together to talk about our 10 favorite games of the year 2021. Such a great, glorious year. I think it was a pretty good year for games.
For games, yes. It was pretty solid, I think.
Hades, I'm not losing my mind. Hades was 2020, right?
Yeah.
Hades was so goddamn good that it was like an obvious number one. I feel like this year I struggled to get what was the best, but there was a lot of good stuff.
Yeah, it was less of an obvious number one and more of just a lot of really well-made games.
Yeah. So, without further ado, why don't we start talking about those well-made games, because that's what everyone's come here to do.
All right.
Start us off, Matt, what was number 10?
Number 10, Halo Infinite.
Mm-hmm. You just had a sneaky game on there that I didn't actually play.
Well, we tried to play, but
I tried to play.
Your computer is having trouble.
My computer sonks, and it's old, and every time I tried to load into a game, it crashed on me, so my apologies, I do not have any experience with Halo Infinite, but you do, so why don't you tell us about what makes it so good?
So, it's the 8th game in the series, not counting spin-offs.
Jesus.
And that's around the time where things start to get really boring usually, but Halo Infinite was like a fresh start for the series because they kind of threw out the dumb story stuff that wasn't really going anywhere, and they made it open world, so Halo, I think, is at its best when you are...
The campaign is like open world?
Yeah.
Okay.
So like the first 3 missions, you are kind of doing typical Halo stuff, like on spaceships or whatever, but then you land on the Halo ring itself, which has been sort of broken up by a previous battle, and it kind of just lets you out into this sort of open area. It's not the most original or structurally unique open-world game ever, but you have your enemy outposts and your bases that you can take over, and like there's high-value targets, so you kind of just go wherever you want, screw around, and as you accomplish objectives, you unlock new stuff at your forward operating bases, like new weapons and Marines who accompany you around, and like new vehicles. So like if you want to like go after this high value target, it might be tough on foot, but you can just like grab a warthog with some Marines on the gun, and it's a lot easier that way. So you kind of feel like you're gaining control of this environment as you take it back over from the Covenant after this like horrible battle that you lost to start the story.
You're still fighting the Covenant in this series?
It's like a different faction called the Banished, but it's basically the same guys. There's no Flood, there's no Prometheans from the last games, so it's pretty much, you're just kind of fighting Covenant in familiar looking forest mountainous environments.
Yeah. But
it's really fun. The actual like story missions are still typically like in enclosed areas like you would expect from an older Halo game, but they're fine. But really the fun of the game is just screwing around in the big open world.
How did it look?
It looks quite nice.
Probably why I can't play it.
Yeah, I would like it's a good looking big old Halo game.
Big old Halo game.
So if you like Halo and you like big old games, check it out.
I would assume most people would expect us to put it on the list because of the multiplayer, but you actually didn't play that.
Not very much.
My friends play it, and I'm trying to get in with them, but as I've said, I can't actually play the game.
It is,
so.
Yeah, it's free to play, so that's cool, and I've heard good things about it, but I've just never been much of a
maybe once I fix up my computer.
multiplayer guy.
All right, well, that's number 10. Let's talk about number 9.
Number 9, Moondaeun.
I thought it was Moondaeun when I saw it, but...
Moondaeun.
Moondaeun. Moondaeun is, as you were describing Halo, I was like, man, Matt's really good at like just off the top of his head describing like an encyclopedic type entry of a game. And when I listen to myself talk about shit, I'm like, my brain is like Swiss cheese the way I just ramble through shit. Anyway, let me try and give a breakdown of Moondaeun. Moondaeun is I think black and white or sepia tone. Did it have any color in it?
It's black and white, but like it has like.
This is what I'm talking about. The first thing I say about the game,
the
I'm
art
going on a
style
fucking
is
tangent.
like hand-drawn textures.
Yes, hand-drawn,
like pencil drawn.
It's not like it's a very stylized game. I would call it a light to no horror game, but it's ostensibly a horror game set in. Help me out, Switzerland.
Yeah,
okay,
it's like the mountains of Switzerland.
And they're speaking. Is it Romansh?
Yeah,
which is like a combination of Italian and German, I think.
It's an obscure Swiss language.
Yeah. So you're a guy visiting his grandpappy. Do you know he's dead when you go to visit
I think
him?
you're returning to the village because you heard he died.
Yeah, you got like a letter.
It's
or
like
something.
you were raised by him and then you left, and now you're going back to the village to settle his affairs.
This tiny little like think kind of like Midsummer type European mountain village. And you get there and shit's fucked basically, and no one is there, and everyone's acting weird and cagey. There's like a priest who you try and talk to, but his shit's all fucked up. And at night, there's a bunch of like weird wicker monsters that come out and start threatening everything. You look like pensive. You look like you want to say something.
No, it's just.
Did my Swiss
I'm
trees
just
brain
remembering
forget
the
something?
experience of the game, and it's like it's a unique kind of like spooky but not too scary.
No,
like folk horror game. It's
I'm not like shitting on the game by saying it's not scary. I just mean like
it's not scary,
a horror
but
game.
It's just like it's just mood.
Yeah.
It's like a spooky mood.
Yeah. And I even found it to be like almost wholesome, and it's like, aw, this is not like, it's not like, you know, the blood and guts type game.
I mean, it's like about like a deal with the devil, basically.
I think the most interesting part of the game is I mentioned the Swiss stuff and the Romance language and stuff because that's to me the most interesting part of the game is just this like cultural stuff, seeing like the way of life for this like small mountain village kind of cut off from the rest of society, and like the moval and everything.
Yeah, it's a unique environment for a video game.
You drive around, your primary mode of like vehicular transportation in the game is something called a moval, which is like
a truck.
big hay, a truck for loading up hay. And you use like pitchforks as weapons and light bales of hay on fire.
Eventually
and shit.
you get like a bolt action rifle.
That's true, and that's baller. But good little, cute little story. Fun little kind of no-gi game. Talk to me about our 8th best game of the year.
Number 8, Ratchet and Clank, Rift Apart.
Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart is another Ratchet game.
All right. Number 7. Talk to me about it a little bit.
So it's the way what they did new with this one is that
put it on PS5.
Well, yeah, it's on PS5, so the graphics are incredible, and the story is like you get pulled into this alternate dimension by this device that you were gifted by. Ratchet receives this gift from Clank, which is the Dimensionator, but Dr. Nefarious gets a hold of it, and you get pulled in this other dimension where there's another version of Ratchet, basically Rivet, who's like a female Lombax, and she also meets up with this other. Well, actually, she meets Clank.
Yeah.
And Ratchet meets
Katie?
KD?
Or was it Kit?
Kit.
Might have been Kit, yeah.
Kit is this other female-coded robot. So it's introducing these new characters in this new reality, which is sort of an alternate version of the typical Ratchet reality. And from there, you kind of play just what you'd expect, sort of classic Ratchet platforming action.
Yeah, it's not too much. I mean, there's like, they add little things like because reality's like breaking apart, there's like little dimensional rifts that you can go into. And that's part of, like, some of these launch games always end up being like tech demos for the consoles. Yeah. And I remember when they were showing trailers for this, they were like, look at this, you got these rifts that like let you just walk into another area that's like a window. And that's like just kind of cool technology stuff, but they incorporated in the game with like, I don't even know what to call it, like mini teleports in environments to get around while you're shooting dudes.
Yeah.
I promise not to do this very much on this list, but I always have like weird little complaints about our favorite games of the year. And I just the reason this is probably not even higher for me is like I thought some of the story stuff really it was the characterization was like weird to me in that, and you and I talked about this, that like everyone's kind of like a simpering wuss in this game.
Yeah, I think they wanted to contrast Ratchet more with Rivet, and they wanted Rivet to be like she has like a confident front, although she has some like insecurities underneath, but she's more like upfront and courageous because like I think her role in the galaxy is different because she never had her own Clank.
Yeah.
So she, like her galaxy when you get there is
more of a loner.
It's more like under the thumb of that version. That reality's nefarious.
Yeah.
So she has to be more confident and more of a underground
it's interesting because you highlighted Ratchet, but I actually found it to be more Clank who was kind of annoying me because like in all these sequences where like they usually section off Clank for like puzzle sequences, which I just realized I haven't recorded any footage for, so you're gonna have to imagine the puzzle sequences. But Clank's like inner monologue is like, I know I can do this. I believe in myself. And it's just like, when did you become such a fucking wuss, dude? Like you've saved the universe like 12 times. I think you'd be pretty like okay with everything.
I think like the story is like we're getting to the age where these games are kind of for kids in some ways.
Sure.
Story wise. So
I get
that stuff is just kind of, it's fine.
Yes, I know. And also like this is like a COVID game, right? This is like a developed during quarantine, so probably everyone working on it is having like a crisis of confidence.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of mental health in the stories of these games, I think.
The game's got mental health, folks.
Game's got mental health for sure.
All right, let's talk about number 7.
Number 7, Axiom Verge 2.
Which Matt has written down as Axiom Verge, but it's not. It's Axiom Verge 2.
I mean, I figured you could fill in the blanks without having to call out that I didn't write
I'm gonna nail you on every one of these that you fucked up, buddy. Okay. Don't even get me started on the way. Well, never mind. So Axiom Verge 2 is the sequel to Axiom Verge 1.
Wow.
Yeah, and it's.
But is it though?
Yes. No. Well, haha. You know, Axiom Verge 1, Metroidvania, very much like a send-up of classic, even I would say like NES era Metroid. And, you know, it took Metroid and kind of like subverted some things and like started pushing past boundaries that Metroid 1 wouldn't have crossed. And Axiom Verge 2 is a weird sequel in that it like kind of on the surface level has like almost nothing to do with Axiom Verge 1. Other than being a Metroidvania with a 2D pixel look to it. I thought Matt wanted to say something, and it turns out he was just preparing a sneeze. Yeah.
Cut this out.
So it's got, I think even the same composer, but the style of like the music is different. It feels more like, I don't know. There's a vague like almost Middle Eastern quality to the like art direction of the game
and the music.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So like every aspect of it, and in some ways, I prefer the art style of the first one, but that is more derivative of like Metroid, whereas the second one's kind of more unique in its own thing. And there's some of the music in number 2 is great.
Yeah. There's a new main character. It's a new story. I think it's basically a prequel to the first one.
I guess you could say it's a similar like surface level concept, because in the first one you have like a guy who gets like sucked into another dimension at its most basic level, and that's kind of what's going on with number 2. It's just this weird billionaire lady,
Antarctic
research
space that goes dark, and she goes to check it out, and she gets pulled into this alternate reality.
What I liked about that, like from the get-go, we'll edit this because someone keeps texting me, and I'm like, is my wife dying? No, it's dumb Snapchats. Anyway, what I liked about that right off the bat is like, I think I even messaged you at the time. I was like, is the main character supposed to be an asshole? Because she really comes across as like a real billionaire dickhead.
Well, right. Yes.
Like, she talks to other people that you meet in the game, like, she has no patience for anything, and it's just like, you know, she was on the trail of some other, like, researcher or member of the company or whatever that, like, disappeared in the area, and she's just like, oh, that fucking idiot. What the hell did they do? They fucked everything up.
Yeah, but as the game goes on, she gets, like, put through this, like, really horrible and scarring ordeal.
Yeah. The
changes here, I think.
in a similar way to Axiom Verge 1.
Like cyber body horror.
Yes, I always thought in Axiom Verge 1 there was like a body horror element to it where, and this is where I say like it pushes past things Metroid 1 wouldn't have done, is like, okay, now he gets an upgrade that just like tentacles come out of his back to shoot things at people, and I'm like, ugh. And in Axiom Verge 1, I mean, spoilers for an old game, but like, you eventually come to find that the main antagonist of the game and all of the bosses you've been fighting are like alternate dimension permutations of your own main character that's just like been twisted and mutated over time. And so it's like, again, taking that sort of body horror concept to the next level. Matt mentioned cyber body horror. In this game, you start to incorporate more like cybernetic enhancements or whatever. These beings that you're meeting throughout the game are like basically like androids that they've like kind of put their consciousness into.
Yeah.
I think that's a good enough description. Like made of like nano machines and shit. And you know, it's an interesting story. You pick up on what happened in the world and all this stuff, but you sort of start to become that way yourself in trying to get to new areas. And like Matt said, the main character sort of undergoes like in my opinion, sort of like an ego death. Like they have such a strong ego in the beginning, and by the end, they're kind of like, they literally like
They don't know who they are anymore, really.
Right, and they become a completely different person. And to your point in saying, like, is it a sequel to Axiom Verge 1? No. If anything, it is a prequel to it.
Right.
There's very minor hints of Axiom Verge 2 or Axiom Verge 1 in there, to the point that I don't even think you even really picked up on them at the time.
I mean, there was some that I noticed.
Okay. But anyway, yeah, I mean...
it's worth mentioning, I think, like, the first game had a lot of shooting, and, like,
Yes.
you getting all these different guns as you go along. And in this game, like, you have, like, an axe, basically, and the ability to, like, hack enemies to make them passive or fight for you or just slow them down or whatever. So
Yeah.
the shift in the action, I thought was interesting. And it was a lot of fun in the game. Like, it doesn't really guide you very much as far as where to go.
No, not at all.
So
I was
it's
occasionally
really
frustrated, but I prefer that generally to hand-holding.
It's really, all about exploring this strange world. And
I mean, contrast it with, spoiler alert, Metroid Dread is not on this list. Matt enjoyed it a good bit, but I would say Metroid Dread, one of the biggest issues I had was it quite literally funnels you into, like, everything. I mean, you can break away from it, but I feel like you're penalized for doing so. Whereas Axiom Verge 2 is very much just like, lets you go out and do your own thing. And also, you know, you mentioned the action. I think you sneezy boy over here.
the cats.
Yeah, I know. I'm sorry. I got two cats and their hair is everywhere. You said, I think when you beat it, that if it weren't for the combat, the game would be a masterpiece.
Yeah.
So it's not great. And to be fair, I didn't think the combat in 1 was great either, because I remember they just kept giving me different kinds of weapons. I was like, I'm only going to use like 2 or 3 of these, gang. I don't need 12.
Yeah, I thought the approach in 2 was interesting, and I liked the exploration focus, but if it also had like combat I really liked, I might have even liked it more.
Yeah. But that's, to me, it's not enough to like really ding the game on. So yeah, check it out. Axiom Verge 2. Talk to me about number 6, man.
Number 6, Returnal.
Finally have a PS5. Praise Jeebus. And Returnal was the first game I played on it. But you've played a bit of it.
I played a few hours.
Returnal is a proc-gen, procedurally generated third-person shooter game, heavily based around... This is the year of Groundhog Day games, where you keep dying and coming back to life, hence the name Returnal. You are a exploring astronaut. It doesn't really tell you much about what's going on, but...
Ever?
Correct.
Because I was wondering, like, there's a very mysterious feeling to the game, and I wondered how much you would learn about where you were and why you were there.
This is, you know what? I'm trying not to do too many spoilers, because I feel like you don't want to, but this is one where I think I should.
We should only talk about them if they're relevant to why we want to talk about the game.
So...
if that makes sense.
So just from the outset, though, you're an astronaut who crash lands on a hostile alien world. It's very strange. It's got all these weird, like, Metroid-like doors and architecture, and you just, you know, move through room to room, collecting upgrades, collecting different weapons, and you know, you progress to different biomes through the game. And every time you die, she wakes back up and at her ship and kind of goes forward from there. You do gain permanent upgrades. Like, one of the first things you will get is you get a energy sword, which is cool as fuck, and you carry that through from that point on.
As far as I saw, it was like there's a difference between like permanent upgrades and just like permanent, like the sword's basically it's like a key almost. Like, it is an ability, but it also,
well, you use it in melee.
Yeah, you can use it as a weapon, but it's also just like a tool.
Yeah, it's a tool
like,
to.
It's not like Hades, where you can like unlock abilities to your weapons to make them stronger.
Right. You don't. So like, you will never get something like a permanent health upgrade.
Right.
But you will unlock like a type of item that might give you a health upgrade. Like the first time you encounter this upgrade for, this thing will let you disable all turrets in an environment. Now that's part of the game. It's a little more like Binding of Isaac in that way, which you've never played. But I guess what I liked so much about it in playing the game and then thinking back on it later was, I think this is the most like intense I felt playing a game. Like, it had that really like almost Dark Soulsy, like, oh fuck, god damn it, I gotta get this boss, I gotta get it. My like that kind of roller coaster type.
Yeah.
I'm a bit of a thrill seeker, man, when it comes to my games.
Yeah, I don't know if the proc gen element is necessary for that to
Matt
work.
doesn't really. You are not a big procedurally generated,
big
run-based guy.
Run-based game type of person.
You would rather make progress and not have to redo something over and over.
Right.
Whereas I don't mind it. And so I want to talk a little bit about the aesthetics of the game. I think those are also quite good. I like the sound design. I like the look of everything. And it has sort of a spooky, like, mysterious element to it. Like, so you're exploring through this weird alien jungle and you just come across like a mid-century Earth house just like chilling in the jungle.
PT.
From PT. You messaged me and said, is this supposed to be PT? Because you eventually get a key to this house and you can explore through it, and it's first-person perspective when you're walking through the house. It looks kind of like PT.
It looks a lot like PT.
And you interact with items, and weird, spooky stuff happens. You see like this weird astronaut kind of following you around and stuff. And the game is hard, I would say. That's where that Soulsy experience comes from. It's very punishing. And I don't always love that, but I liked it in this application because it really made me want to focus on beating it, and the highs were higher because of that. You played through the first boss at least, right? You got to the second biome?
Yeah, I got to the second area, and I died there a couple times, and I was like, all right. I get it. It's a fun game. It's just not my type of game.
Yeah. Well, so, okay. If you're good, we can move on from there, but if you want to stick around for a little bit of spoiler discussion, because you're probably not going to play it again, right?
Probably not.
Okay. So the game, skip to this point in the video if you want to skip spoilers, and I'll put in like a little audio cue as well.
Skip to 28:35 to avoid spoilers.
So I want to spoil two things. One of which is there is sort of a mid-game twist, which I liked. When I beat Biome 2 for the first time, I was on a fucking roll. I had a Hollow Seeker, which is like this rapid-fire gun, with Vampire. So, like, when it hit enemies every once in a while, it would give me health back.
Yeah.
So I was, like, fucking invincible. And I was just getting... my health upgrades were huge, so I had tons of health. And I ended up I got through the second biome, I got through the third biome, and got to the boss with, like, a health regen and like two auto heals or whatever. So I was like, it was a hard ass boss. And actually I looked it up after the fact, and like the third boss gives most people like the most problems, but I nailed his ass. And he was hard, but I got through it. And then you discover the White Shadow signal, which is what she's been looking for the whole game. She keeps talking about White Shadow. And like you're ostensibly done. Like, it plays a cutscene, they come collect you, and it does like a quick like time-lapse thing showing her life as she's like playing piano and like growing older and all this shit, and she fucking dies. And then she wakes back up on the planet again, and she's like, God damn it. Like,
Right. That's good.
She was rescued and brought to Earth and lived out all of her days to old age and still loops back to the planet. By the time you get back to the planet, it's like 40 years later or something. So you should be back at the first biome, but like things look a little different. Like it's technically the first biome, but like it looks more like daytime and like shit's a little different. So that's at that point you start from that point, and that's biome 4, and then you go through 2 more. So there's 6 biomes.
You don't really have to play 6 at one.
You don't. Yeah. Okay. After you beat the first 3, you don't start again. You go to 4th biome, and then you go 4, 5, 6.
Are 5 and 6 different from?
Yes. 5 is like icy, though it's the same area as 2, but just like iced over.
Okay.
And 6 is completely different. 6 is like an underwater area. So that's the first thing I want to spoil. It's just that's a cool like little mid-game twist.
That is clever.
And then the second thing is, I was disappointed with the ending of the game because, as I said, it does have this cool story setup and stuff, but the end of the game happens and it's definitely, I don't know, did you pick up on anything with like her daughter or her mom or anything?
I think there's so much in her family, but I don't remember specifics.
It sounds like she references maybe a daughter she left back on Earth, but also like some weird complexes she has with her mom. You hear some stuff about like a car crash at some point. You start to piece together like maybe either she was rescued from a car crash or her daughter died in a car crash or something. But you never fully piece together. And also there's this like astronaut following you the whole time. And you gather that maybe her mom was an astronaut. But anyway, you get to the end of the game and the car is there. It's like underwater in this environment. And you see this weird like Cthulhu-like monster. And it kind of pulls you back to the very beginning of the game. And you kind of restart at that point. And I know there's another ending, like a secret ending, but from what I've gathered, it's not that different, and it's just kind of disappointing because there's not that much there. There's all these like little pieces, and it's kind of David Lynchian type, like, just figure it out, genius, you know? And the thing I'll say though is I looked up a little bit online, and so I saw some threads on like the sub, and it was like, is Celine the girl's mom, or is the astronaut Celine's mom? Is the astronaut Celine? And all these questions like that. And I saw a thread that broke down all these different theories and how they relate. And then I saw one that said, Celine is the Greek goddess of the moon. And I went, what? And then I looked into it, and I'm pretty sure in Returnal, Celine is the Greek goddess of the moon.
Okay.
Either that, or it is heavily based around that just as a framework. Because if you look up all the names of the bosses, they are actually all like Greek titans. She does a lot in the game ascending a mountain, like Mount Olympus or whatever, like the titans ascending it. Selene is the name of the Greek goddess of the moon. All the names of bosses, including the final one. There's a bunch of connections there. And also some implication that maybe she is her daughter and her own mom.
Yeah.
So there's more going on there that may hold together better than I would think. And I do appreciate stories that don't just feed you everything and just kind of give you breadcrumbs and let you connect them, which is maybe more than I would expect from a game like this. So I can't say that the ending was disappointing. In a way, I think is actually kind of cool.
I mean, that's not really an ending. It's not really an explanation of anything. It's
Well,
just,
Mulholland Drive isn't really an ending either, but it's still a dope movie.
I mean, it's a movie. It's not a video game.
Well, the lines are blurring every day, man. David Cage, Quantic Dream.
Oh my god.
All right, that's all I wanted to say. That's way too long talking about Returnal. So I'll now talk about game number 5.
Number 5, NieR Replicant.
Yeah, so NieR Replicant is only technically a game that came out this year. It is really just a remaster. There's not a remake, really. There's not that much change between the original.
They added stuff.
That's
to
true.
It.
They did add like some cut
stuff,
content.
and I think it's more than just like an upres. Like they definitely changed some parts of it.
Of NieR.
Like the combat, they changed the combat significantly to be similar to Automata's. So it's not just a re-release, but it's also not a full remake.
Yeah.
So we'll just talk about it.
The reason, and also I don't care if
It's a very
it's a
blurry
game
line.
that is even like early access. If it's important to this year, then I would say it belongs in this year. And also, I have a feeling that maybe more people played NieR this year for the first time than ever before.
Possible.
So I have a somewhat NieR is a weird series. If you don't know about it, I'll try and break it down. There was an old PS2 series called Drakengard. The sort of joke ending of Drakengard, ending E, secret ending, leads to NieR. Though it doesn't really say this in the game, you have to kind of figure it out. And then NieR got a direct sequel, NieR Automata, which we played a couple of years ago and is kind of the critical darling of the series, I would say. We played NieR Automata first, and I loved it. So I loved it so much that I looked up the ending to Drakengard, and I loved that so much that I played through Drakengard 1 to get to it, which was
Not great.
there were things I liked about it, but it was quite a slog. And then I was very interested in playing NieR Replicant. I don't know if that's the best way to So I had someone ask me this year, like, what is NieR? Like, they were looking for something to play. Should I play that? And I was like, no. Even though it's my 5th best game of the year. I think if I were to recommend it to someone, I might recommend Automata
I
first.
would say, looks like, so Automata is a sequel to NieR, but it's not a direct sequel in the sense, like, you don't need to have played NieR
Yeah.
to understand the story of Automata. And I think Automata, if you like it, you can go back and play NieR like we did.
Yeah.
And that's fine, except, like, if you're just going to play one game, play Automata.
Yes. I think if you played NieR Replicant by itself, you might be like, why do you like this so much? And it's not as complicated, like philosophically or story-wise, as NieR Automata, in my opinion. It's a little more one note. But I will say NieR Automata will spoil probably the central big thing about NieR that is kind of interesting story-wise.
Like, I think the problem with NieR Replicant is that the second playthrough, in this series, you play through the game multiple times to see the real story. The second playthrough hits hard.
Yeah.
Then you have to play it like 2 more times to get the actual final ending.
Yes.
So that's a problem.
That's a conceit of these games, is he makes you play through them over and over again, and then things change when you play through them, which is really cool, but it takes some patience. I remember my brother played NieR Automata and played through the first time, and then I was like, okay, now you got to play round B, and he was like, no, I beat the game, I'm done with it. I'm like, no, you have to play it. So, I mean, I should talk a little bit about what NieR actually is. The opening sequence is pretty cool. It's like a bombed out weird city covered in like snow and ash, and you're like a brother and sister in some convenience store trying to find like a can of food.
Yeah, scraping together supplies and...
Yeah, and she's obviously fucked up, and these weird like shadow monsters attack you. You go out and you beat the hell out of them. And you keep gaining this ability the whole time. There's like some weird magic book that is making you gain these magical powers as you're fighting them. And then you go back in and I don't know, she had like touched the book or something, but she's sick as a dog, and you're just like, man, these 2 kids are fucked. And then it just like cuts to a different scene
I think it says like so many years later, right?
Yeah. And it's
over
like this
1,000 years later.
And it's a much more like fantastical environment. It doesn't look like a modern day city.
It's like a sort of a classic medieval fantasy type of
it's
location.
like society rebuilt itself in Tolkien's world or something. But and you're this little boy going on adventures, and
the boy and his sister are the same as
Yes.
in the intro.
so it's one of those things where like the intro is, if you didn't know what was going on, the intro is so weird that you just kind of forget about it in the back of your head, and you're just like, all right, that happened, I guess there's something there, but I can't process it. And I think it's a pretty simple game.
It's very straightforward, like action RPG.
Hack and slash type stuff. You fight these little shadow monsters, and they take over the town, and your sister is sick, and you're trying to heal her. But there's more going on under the surface. I don't know that we need to talk about spoilers, because it would take us a long time. But needless to say, there's a lot more going on, as is hinted at in the beginning. Combat, fine. Not really anything to write home about. The real, standout thing here is the story and the presentation of ideas, and
The characters are good.
sure. I think that's
Especially, I think like the main character is pretty standard, but he has a couple of allies that I like a lot.
I like
They're sort of
Emil and
Emil's like a strange-looking wizard boy.
Yeah,
And,
with a weird moon, scary moon
is
face.
A woman,
Foul-mouthed.
sword woman with not many clothes on.
Yes. Which is like, it's one of those things that's like, oh, this is problematic, but also like weirdly progressive in certain ways. So Japan is a different culture.
You either roll with it or you don't, I guess.
Yeah. At the end of the day, NieR is kind of about perspectives and not, how narrow our own view is, and how we can never really see things from another point of view. And how conflict arises because of that.
Also about a lot of weird sci-fi shit.
Sure. That too. So if you like that kind of stuff, consider NieR or NieR Automata. They're both quite good. I've forgotten who's been introducing these. I'm pretty sure it's your turn, Matt.
All right. Number 4 is Deathloop.
Number 4, Deathloop.
Is my personal favorite game.
You just got to get that in there, don't you?
Well, you do what you want, but I'm saying that.
Fair enough.
Deathloop is a new game by Arcane, who is known for making immersive sim-style games. In this game, you play Colt, who is this guy who wakes up on a beach, doesn't know where he is. Turns out he's on an island where time loops every day.
Groundhog
so at the
Day.
end of the sort of like Groundhog Day every day. If you die or if you reach the end of the day, then the day starts over, as if nothing has happened, except you retain your memories of what you had done before, and also anything that you have equipped that you infused with this special substance stays
Right.
with you.
You can kind of choose what things are permanent.
So it's sort of run-based because of the whole starting the day over thing, but also not, because you can build up your arsenal and your powers over time. And like the whole game is about gaining, like you. So Colt is trying to break the loop, and to do that, he has to kill all of the visionaries.
Yeah.
Who are like the bosses.
Yeah.
On this island, and when you kill one, you learn more about them, and you can also figure out how you can manipulate them to be in different locations at different times, so you can actually get them all in one day.
Right.
And that's basically your goal.
Like you find out that two of them are secretly fucking, and they meet up at noon every day.
And like you have to go through this whole process of finding like the information on where they are, and also how you even get into that place. There's like a secret code to get into their little love nest. So like you are repeating this loop, but like each time you do it, you have like a specific goal. So you're not like just doing the same stuff over and over again.
So it's kind of like, it's funny because we have Returnal on this list and Deathloop, and they're both approaches of run-based games. One of which I'd say is much more unforgiving and like you don't get that much upgrade between. But Deathloop is much more. It feels more like a linear progression type game because of how you
like
progress in
the
game
loop is
items.
just about like you gaining an understanding of this. Like there's like 4 different main areas on this island, and like they change over the course of the day. And as you repeat them, like you learn specific things about them, and it's just like,
the real area where the
cool
game
feeling.
helps you with that is it logs stuff. So like if you get a password for opening some vault, the game will just remember that. And when you go up to that door again, it'll be like, do you want to just auto put in this password? Yes. So in that way, it's like getting a key, but you always have the key. There's also Juliana, who is a character, I guess one of the visionaries, who's talking to you the whole time.
Yeah.
Very antagonistic. She seems to know your whole shit. She starts hinting that you've tried to break the loop several times before and always turn back or whatever. And, as you end levels and start levels, or sometimes just in the middle, Juliana will come on your radio and like talk shit to you, and sometimes show up randomly to try and kill you.
And she can be player controlled if you have that turned on.
Yes. Though I don't think it ever happened to me. I think my connection in the basement wasn't good enough.
Yeah, I also had connection problems, but
I imagine that would have been much more annoying because she probably would have killed me.
yeah,
I don't think Juliana killed me once in the real game. I kicked her ass.
she definitely. So Colt can die twice on any map before he actually on your third death. That's when you fail and you have to start over.
Yeah. Which is also very forgiving and nice.
Yeah, so she's definitely killed me, but I don't know if she ever
Right, it's a good point. Killed you to
permanent sense.
Killed and compromised to a permanent end.
Right.
Deathloop is a great game. The setting is very and the world building is very cool. I think this whole idea of like this.
Yeah.
It's basically like debauchery island where like all these people go to just like have an endless party.
Yeah, it's got like kind of a 60s spy theme.
Yeah. And like the music and everything kind of felt that way.
I don't think the story overall is terribly interesting, but I do like like you said, the world building. It just like they created this weird space.
The ideas behind it are very. It reminded me of a mixture of, what did I say, BioShock and Dishonored, kind of.
Yeah.
And the gameplay felt kind of like Dishonored. You're like, it's largely stealth based. You're sneaking around, but you can also go in guns blazing. I'd say this game really does nail that kind of balance between the two. Some games it's just like Wolfenstein. I feel like it's one of those games where it's just like just go in guns blazing because trying to stealth is not really super viable.
I would try to stealth and kill like the commander so they couldn't summon reinforcements.
But you know, I like the little details of like a lot of the people that you see just milling about are like getting drunk or being childish and stupid.
There's this one guy on one map who's playing a guitar.
Yeah,
and it's like in the morning he's just really bad at it, but by the end of the night he's playing like sick riffs.
Well, that's another interesting, just like small detail of the game, and it's kind of something that comes through the story. Is like they believed, I think, when they went to this island that they would retain their memories, but they don't.
Yeah, so everyone thinks that it's the first day of the loop, so that's why the big party's happening.
Yeah, and they always say on the loudspeaker like, "Welcome to first day," and I was confused by that at first. I was like, "It's what do they mean first day? Don't they know like, it's repeating?"
They weren't expecting this like amnesia effect because like Juliana and Colt are the only characters in the story of the game who retain any memories of previous loops.
And even then, not always, apparently, because Colt gets
selective the implication that Colt had previously had memories and then forgotten them again.
Yeah.
And it's happened multiple times.
Do you care to talk at all about the twist? Skip to this point if you... I mean, that's if you want to talk about it.
So it's fine.
Skip to 43:25 to avoid spoilers.
Well, so there's a twist near the end of the story that Juliana is actually Colt's daughter. He had arrived on the island, the island was first like explored in the 30s by like this military that Colt was a part of, and he went into this time anomaly on this island and came out like many years later. And by that point, he went back. He was looking for his girlfriend who was also there. And he goes back to the island. He joins this new group, the Aeon group, which is the actual characters of the game, to try and find her. But then he gets to the loop and he meets Juliana. Turns out he finds out that she's his daughter.
Yeah. And there's some like minor quasi-sexual tension before that moment where he's like, did we date or something? And, you know.
And some people found that really off-putting in a way that I thought it was like, the twist is not, he had the thing for his daughter. It's just like, his mind is so messed up that he doesn't know that he has a daughter that age.
I think if you were disturbed by that, then you should watch the movie Old Boy. That might put things into perspective a little bit. But yeah, I mean, it's funny because when you told me that, I was like, was that even a twist? Because I will say you can play this game, you can progress through it in kind of different ways. And for me, that happened at about like the halfway point through my game, I think.
Yeah, I didn't. So you find that out when you're trying to... So besides just finding out how to kill the 7 other visionaries, the final visionary, Juliana, you have to go to this central location.
Yeah.
And the way to get there is with this rocket. And so you have to figure out how to put the rocket back together.
Yeah.
And it's while you're doing that, figuring out how to do the rocket, that you find out about Juliana. Yeah. And that's the last thing I did.
That's fine.
If it's not the last thing you did.
It was like one of the first things I did, so yeah. Just an interesting little tidbit there. But that's Deathloop.
It's a really fun game.
It's a great game.
Clever design.
Yeah. One of the more unique games on this list. And speaking of unique games...
Number 3, Inscription.
Inscription is a tactical deck-building card game where you play as a guy who appears to be trapped in like a cabin with a weird blinky eye monster.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? And you're playing a card game, but you can also kind of get up from the table and walk around this weird cabin.
You're trapped in this cabin, but there's like different objects in it that you can
interact with
and try to...
There's like a clock on the wall that maybe if you wind it to the right setting, and your cards some of them will talk to you and give you some insight into what to do. They'll say, check out the, and And I'd say from a pure gameplay standpoint, it's a lot of fun. It's kind of a interesting system. It's like I say, it's tactical because it's not super forgiving. Yeah.
I just want to briefly describe it's like in card games, the way they work is that you have some sort of currency you use to play cards.
Yeah.
And in this game, the currency is you have to sacrifice your existing cards. And I think that's like
like instead of tapping mana and magic, you would get rid of one of your shitty cards to bring out a...
And I thought it was a cool tactical consideration of like, what am I willing to sacrifice in order to put something better on the table?
Yeah. And it also gives it a very like dark, like quasi-satanic feel right off the bat, because you have to like kill
blood sacrifices of your creatures to bring forth new ones.
Yeah. And it's got good music, very moody atmosphere, and is created by the guy who created Pony Island. So because of that, you know that there's going to be some weird shit going on, some, let's say, mid-game twists, and a lot of like meta layers to it. I don't know if I want to go into what those are, but I mean, why not?
Yeah.
I don't know, man. I mean, I want to describe as much of the game as I can without doing that, but I had a lot of fun just playing the game and trying to get through it, getting past the bosses. I thought like I said, you fighting this weird, like, you can just see his eyes in the darkness for the most part, and when it comes to time to, like, fight a boss, he puts on, like, a mask, like he's playing a character or whatever, and you can see his, like, eyes through the mask. You know, you fight the prospector and you fight the angler or whatever he calls himself. And it plays this cool, like, spooky music when the bosses are around.
The boss fight music is really good.
Yeah, especially the prospector. I loved, like, the clanking sound in the distance. And, you know, it took me... So I played the game thinking it was going to be, like, run-based, and it is.
That part of the game is run-based.
Yeah. And I also kind of thought it was going to be like Hades, because I finally beat him, and then it was like, okay, good job. You start over. And he, like, takes a picture of you and hangs it on the wall.
Yeah.
And I did that like 4 or 5 times. And I was like, oh, I'll just keep doing this until I beat it. And then I was like, not that much is changing. I got to pay more attention to what these cards are saying. And I started exploring the cabin more. And I was like, you know what? I bet you know, he takes a picture of you when you beat him every time. I was like, I bet you I get film in this camera at some point, so I can take a picture of him.
When you either when he beats you or when you beat him, like, he asks you to hand him the camera. And if you try to take a picture, there's no film in it.
Yeah.
So you have to give him the camera, and then he takes a picture of you and you die.
Can you do that if he beats you?
Yeah.
I don't know. You can?
It happened to me once that he gave me...
It was sitting there when he was going to kill you.
Yeah,
or
he
whatever.
said, hand me the camera.
I assumed you had to beat him, but... So... Is that enough to talk about? Should we say anything else before moving on to Spoiler Town?
I think we covered the non-spoiler part.
Okay, if you want to go to Spoiler Town, just keep listening, but if you want to skip past Spoiler Town, the exit to Spoiler Town, go to this timestamp.
Skip to 52:47 to not go to Spoiler Town.
So, I feel like Act 1 of Inscription would be like my game of the year. I was loving it. And that's not to say I didn't like what happened afterwards. I was actually like, I did a stream of this. My pants were charmed off when I beat him. Because I thought I was going to like see credits. Instead, the game like rolls you through a series of video files that you can play. That is...
So the way you beat him is that you have to find a hidden film.
Sure, he takes a picture of you every time you die.
And then, so you have to beat him again and then use the film and the camera to take a picture of him. And that's how you actually finish that part of the game.
Right, and that's it. When that happens, you go into this interface where you play these things. It's kind of like the game Her Story, where you're just playing through audio clips, but there's no sorting really, you just play them. And it's a guy who has like a YouTube channel or a streamer of some kind playing old card games.
Not even playing them, just like unpacking cards.
Yeah, ridiculous. Trying to find like rare ones.
I believe there are people who actually just do that.
Oh yeah, 100%. And he's talking about a card game called Inscription, which I think in the universe is like, is it still active or is it just like an old game?
It was an obscure game from like the 90s that had like one set and they never expanded on it.
Yeah, but he's trying to find rare ones,
like rare
boosters. You follow that a little bit, and I think in the first batch of videos, I think in that first batch you see him find a weird like address for somewhere. How does he get it?
He gets coordinates.
Yeah.
He goes out to the woods and he digs up
a game disc.
Yeah, like a box that has a floppy disk for an Inscription video game on it.
Yeah, Inscription video game.
You find out what you realize is that the game that you've been playing is a video game that this person found in the woods.
You are
Based on this
possibly the
night's
guy
story.
playing
Yeah.
it as well.
Well,
And
I think that's the implication because like you hear him talking.
yeah, and like sometimes it goes to like a recording.
What the game is
camera.
presenting is his video capture of himself playing this game.
Yeah, he'll say like, "What the fuck?" and bullshit. So then the game shifts to be a more pixel-based Pokemon. It's kind of like Pokemon, top-down like explorer world with like gym leaders, and there's 4 bosses that you have to beat, and one of them is the guy in the cabin in the woods that you were fighting. The other ones are people who look very much like the cards that are talking to you.
Basically it's like the 4 people who I think made Inscription in the first place are represented.
Oh, okay. You're saying. Sorry, I thought you meant they represented the creators.
Not the
of
real
game.
life creators, but just in the fiction, the people who created Inscription are represented as these 4 boss figures in the game.
Yeah, one's like a robot, one's like a wizard, etc. So that is where, to me, I won't say the game fell off. It was still fun, but I really liked the gameplay of Act 1.
Yeah.
And then in Act 2, they expand on it, which is commendable because it's more deep. But I also I liked the basic gameplay of that first act, and like introducing more complications to it. I was like, okay, I get it.
We didn't even talk in the first act the progression of the actual game, where like you are improving your cards, you're getting the totems and all that stuff. And that stuff's not like, the game is just different. Like where you're just like playing a guy, and if you lose, there's no penalty.
Yeah, right. It felt more like Act 1 was a fully fleshed out, developed game, and then Act 2, not to say it's not fleshed out, but it just didn't feel as, it felt tacked on to me. And then you proceed to Act 3, which is you get more video files and get more of the story. And Act 3 is like Act 1. But the mechanical guy has kind of taken over, and he's making you play through basically Act 1 again, but with different rules that are kind of based more on his aesthetic.
It's more of like a Souls type of progression than a run-based.
Sure, you have checkpoints and stuff.
There's checkpoints, and if you die, you go back to the checkpoint.
Yeah.
But if you clear out the area,
and that's where the game did kind of fall off. It was still fine, and I liked the bosses of that area. They were very inventive. They do stuff like fuck with your... Yeah. They access files on your computer.
There are some interesting tactical changes in the third act, but I agree that the actual card game is just not quite as fun.
And I just didn't like the aesthetic as much. You're playing on this like little digital board game.
Yeah,
it's everything's blue. It didn't grab me. The ending was impressive. The way it kind of rips through all these different
like the game is like trying to get itself published on Steam.
Yeah,
basically.
Yeah,
by like all the different bosses were different aspects.
Well, he's trying to, and then she's trying to delete it. Yeah, no one knows what we're talking about. Basically,
it's weird. It's like a weird meta.
There's the twist of the game, the twists of the game, and the meta layers that I find charming, but also the game was good enough without those, so it's a little bit of a catch-22 for me.
Have you tried Casey's mod?
I've not tried it's the endless run.
Yeah,
mode,
there's
right?
an official like beta of there's just other mode for the game where you can just play the first act endlessly, which I might check it out.
Yeah, I know Steve played it and he thought it was cool. But that's Inscription.
It's a good game.
It's a very good game. Matt, talk to me about our number 2 game of the year.
Number 2, Resident Evil Village.
Resident Evil Village is a Resident Evil game. It was just called Village when it was teased, right? I think
they just showed Village on the screen, but it was always called Resident Evil Village.
Okay, fair enough.
It feels like kind of a greatest hits of Resident Evil.
Yes.
In some ways, like it's first person, like 7, and the sort of
you play as the main character from 7.
And the village environment feels reminiscent of 4.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of people make 4 comparisons. But you are in this one. You're kind of fighting like classic monsters, like vampires and werewolves.
Yeah.
And I think part of what you're saying with it feeling like a best of is the first area you go into is this big sort of castle with the famous Lady Dimitrescu, who's this giant vampire woman. Step on me, mommy. You've seen all the memes.
That mansion felt sort of like Resident Evil 1 kind of.
Sure. It's like the classic
Except also,
locked doors.
You also have the element of like the character chasing you, so that's sort of like 2.
2 had that, yeah. She's like the Mr. X of the game, and her daughters that show up. And so you've got that kind of classic feel there, and then you beat her, whatever, you beat that area fairly early on, you move into a new one. And the new one feels kind of like 7 in a way, but kind of its own thing. It's more of like a pure horror experience.
Well, it kind of actually it reminded me of like indie horror games. So if you take away your ability to fight at all.
Yes.
So you're really just
and
running
I would say
from this really horrifying creature.
actually scary part of the game, I thought. Which Resident Evil, I mean, Resident Evil is tense and has its moments, but it's action a lot of the time.
It's like jump scares, where like there's like this part of the game is like
palpable
it's
tension.
Like I do not want to
dread.
like there's this thing chasing you. I don't want to deal with that thing.
Yeah,
it just is actually like freaky.
Yeah, and then Area 3 was like the lichen type.
No, I think it was the fish. The
Oh
water
right,
area.
that was the one I did not like. I mean, what would you even attribute that? I'd say that was like the quick time event section of the game.
Like you were like using buttons to like raise bridges so you could cross over these like
I
this
wasn't
water.
crazy about it, but basically all these like sort of 4 or 5 bosses that you're going through have kind of a different gameplay feel to them, and it kind of feels like Matt said, like a greatest hits of Resident Evil, and so there's kind of something for everyone there.
I feel like they just like had people who working on the game who just like had ideas and like
Sure.
any idea was valid and they would screw around with them, and like it just feels like they had a lot of fun just like figuring out how to put like a game together from all these different small parts.
Yeah, similar to Inscription, it's one of those things where it's like, man, I really liked Area 1 and it was a lot of fun, and Area 3 kind of sucks, and I kind of wish the whole game was just Area 1.
Yeah.
But the action is good.
The story is not good.
No, the story sucks.
There's a lot of violence against women and women being called bitches constantly.
I have a problem where I keep trying
weird.
to make bad, dumb game series like good, and like I don't know. I talk about like, oh, in Metroid they should do this with the story. It's like no one gives a fuck what's happening with the story of Metroid. In the same way with Resident Evil, like Resident Evil's story is stupid, but to me, I want it to be dumb, but like not ridiculous.
This is very dumb.
Yes, it is. It is like Resident Evil 6 is preposterous, and 5 is like preposterous, and it's all preposterous. You understand what I'm saying?
7.
7 felt a little more grounded in like a.
But it does get ridiculous. Like they all get even more ridiculous at the end. So like you just want them to start somewhere grounded. So
I guess
it gets so ridiculous.
I don't know. By the end of 8, I'm just like, holy shit, man.
The last section of Village is not good.
Yeah.
But everything before that I mostly liked.
Yes. And
Lots of good combat and puzzle solving.
I see a world where Village would have been our number 1 game, but because of those kind of highs and lows to me, that was the thing that held me back. But I don't know if I had as much fun with a game as the fun parts of Village this year.
Yeah, I mean, like they're masters of just like that kind of deliberate horror action survival.
Keep making them, gang, because they're fun as shit. But that all being said, let's talk about numero uno.
Number 1, Psychonauts 2.
Psychonauts 2. Bang!
A game that was kickstarted before I had my job, which I've been at for 6 years.
And it wasn't even Kickstarter. It was their weird... Yeah. How many years in the making? Wasn't it 2004? Was it 2004 that Psychonauts 1 came out?
I think it was 2005.
2005? Okay, so 15, 16 years in the making, basically. Originally a Xbox original game, I think, and PC.
The original game was going to be published by Microsoft. They dropped it, and it was picked up by, I think, Majesco.
But it's a Tim Schafer game.
But this game
Double Fine
was crowdfunded, and then Microsoft bought Double Fine. So it's kind of a weird circle there.
Revenge. Well, not revenge. They just came back and it finally made
And they actually
good.
gave them the money to finish it correctly.
But Psychonauts 1 was a quirky little, I guess you could call it...
I love that game. It was great.
Yeah, platformer.
It was an platformer.
And I remember liking it a lot.
With a lot of like Tim Schafer is an adventure game designer from like the really old days in the 90s. So like he brought some of that stuff into that like a sort of more modern platforming game.
He made Day of the Tentacle and Full Throttle and all the classics, a lot of LucasArts games. But and then it quietly faded from my memory, and then I crowdfunded Psychonauts 2. I was like, oh yeah, I'd like to see another one of those. And I think part of why it is so high for me is I was surprised at how much I loved it, in that it was like just every new level I was like, oh my god, these guys are so good.
Yeah.
It's to me it's like this just super creative I don't even know what to call it. Like he seems like a real like auteur, and he's just like constantly bringing in new ideas.
Yeah, like a lot of it I think is also just art direction is really good, so they have a lot of good artists, and like there's a lot of like he's a really good comedy writer.
Yep, the humor's always been good.
Like there's also lots of good voice acting and stuff. So
yep.
So if you don't know what Psychonauts is, like you play this kid who has psychic abilities. In the first game, he was at the summer camp for young psychics. He graduates from that like program, and in this game, he's actually joining the Psychonauts, who are like a spy agency.
Yeah.
So they have the
mental.
ability,
Yeah.
The main thing is like you can enter people's minds to help them with their mental problems.
Yeah. I mean, in the first, it's kind of like, I think the first level of the game kind of dispels. Oh, second level kind of dispels this, because it's like, oh, they can enter their mind and steal the spy secrets or whatever. But the very first mission of the game is kind of like you trying to manipulate your instructor into doing something she doesn't want you to do.
Well, that's like the second.
I keep saying first, but it's the first one's a tutorial level.
Well, the first level is like the real like spy. Like
sure.
You imagine that's what the Psychonauts usually do. Like they're trying to get information from someone's mind by putting them like you're in their mind and they're in there too. It's weird.
Yeah, it's hard to. It's like you trying to trick them into
trick them into believing they're in a reality where they would give you this information.
Yeah.
But
then like right off the bat, like you're trying to make these like mental connections in this in your instructor's mind to try and get her to whatever.
The instructor won't let the young Psychonauts go on the fun mission, so you try to change her mind by going inside her brain,
and it spins wildly out of control, and you get in trouble. And the game has a nice little sit down moment. It's like, hey man, that's not what we do.
Yeah, I like that, because I thought like the whole mental connection thing was going to be like the big new gameplay thing where you're changing people's ways of thinking.
Yeah.
But then the game actually says, wait, don't do that. That's messed up.
Yeah. I like that little touch.
You shouldn't be changing people's brains without their consent.
And like you said, so the game is you going into all the levels basically are like you going into different people's minds, and like everyone is like has a theme. And this is true of Psychonauts 1 as well, but like there's a guy who believes he's like the bowling alley guy, and you go in his mind, and it's like a germ city, because like he's like spraying the shoes for the bowling shoes before they people use them with the stuff that kills the bacteria. So they're like, we're all gonna die, poison gas, and
you're riding a giant bowling ball. For
there's
level.
Pins everywhere. All the like lanes are lanes, just stuff like that. And I think the level where I was finally like, holy shit, was the psychedelic like Beatles type magical mystery
really
tour level with Jack Black voicing one of the brains that you found in a jar.
This game introduces the idea of the 6 founders of the Psychonauts from back in the day, and like throughout this game you end up exploring most of their minds and bringing them back together to defeat this like horrible evil that they had
broke them
a
all
long
up,
time
basically.
ago. Yeah, had resulted in their getting split up.
Fucked them all up. But on top of the, sorry, what were you gonna say?
Just the game's about helping all these people overcome their traumas, and
it felt like giving them all therapy in a way.
Yeah.
But on top of those worlds that are very interesting inside people's brains, there's an overworld, which I actually thought was pretty like expansive and detailed. I wasn't anticipating it to be so much so.
It's like the summer camp in the first game.
Yeah, so there's, I don't know. I'm
the
a
headquarters
sucker.
and the surrounding areas of the Psychonauts. Yeah.
I'm just a sucker for overworlds in general. I don't know what's wrong with me.
A good one is it's fun,
but it feels throwbacky in that kind of way to sort of platformers of old. But it has so much like creativity and like craftsmanship and like love of the genres and all this stuff in it that like I made a tweet that was like, if you don't like Psychonauts 2, I'm pretty sure we can't be friends. And just like, I'm being, acerbic, but it's just so charming,
Like, I think there are platformers with tighter controls
Sure.
out there, but Psychonauts 1 and 2 both have just like really great stories and just like thematic, like.
Though I thought it controlled
visually
fine. I mean,
cool.
I didn't have like an issue with it.
Like,
But I don't
I
come that
just,
game
like-
for the gameplay.
Like there'd be jumps that just were like felt misaligned and.
Sure. I remember
some
feeling that
awkward
way
moments.
much more with 1. Granted, that was a
2 is an improvement
15-year-old
over
game.
1, I think, but it like Mario is always gonna have, I think,
Oh,
better
fine.
jumping than Psychonauts.
Sure. But Tim shit, like I remember really not liking what was that one adventure?
Age.
I really didn't like Broken Age, but I cannot deny that Tim Schafer's like a fucking genius. So do yourself a favor.
Do yourself a flavor.
Do yourself a flavor. Psychonauts 2 is a flavor to yourself.
Do yourself a flavor
Flavor.
and play Psychonauts
And flavor it.
too.
Yes. So that's our list of the top 10 games of 2021. Did you have any honorable mentions?
I liked Metroid Dread, and you can't take that away from me.
It sucked. What about Hitman 3? I know that you liked that one.
That was good too.
All right.
You got any-
Yeah, I would say I liked check out Buddy Simulator 1984 if you feel like playing something a little short and sweet kind of.
It's like, what if Inscription was not as good and didn't have a card game in it?
Yeah, there's no need for any old games of the year?
No.
I would have one, which would be The Messenger. I played for the first time this year.
I played that too, actually.
Yeah, I thought that was great. I wish I'd played it the year it came out. Very like Ninja Gaiden style, but like a lot of twists to it.
It's good.
Yeah, it's a very good game.
Good writing too.
Yeah, much more deep than you would think just looking at it. So yeah, that's the list. And if you don't like it, you can
What can they do, Matt?
shove it where the sun don't shine. All
Oh,
right,
man.
And you just keep it tuned here because we'll be bringing you all the hits in 2022.
Yep.
Bye.
We're going to be recording constantly because there's no reason not to travel anymore.
No reason not to travel and be staring at each other's faces with you sneezing all over the place.
It's not my fault that you have dirty cats.
It's not my fault you have allergies.
Yeah.
Think about that. Bye.
Matt's Play Games Top 10 Best Games of 2021.